So at the end of the Second World War, what was left with in abundance was manufacturing, because manufacturing really had leaps and bounds. So you have the insignias, you had the pitching of ideas, you had the wish book, now you have the ability to mass produce. So the factories that were created in the aftermath of the Second World War was like, all right, what are we going to do with these? And so companies were buying stuff up, and then it was like producing stuff. And then you had like the unique selling proposition, or unique selling position. And so by the 1940s, you had this amazing campaign by IBM, who now are manufacturing like technology. And so the IBM's thing was think. It was like think. That they had it everywhere. And one of the most amazing slogans they had is "I think, therefore IBM," which is just, when you're thinking about design, whatever. And I didn't realize this at the time. When Apple did their think different, basically they were trolling IBM. So it's like, okay, you have think, and so a lot of Apple's.
Yeah, I never knew that.
A lot of Apple's thing, like there was the 1984 advert that they did in 1984, which was basically trolling IBM, saying, "Don't be like IBM, be like the revolutionary, be all these other things." And so the other thing is, like in the 1940s, like cigarette campaign is unethical or whatever, but like Lucky Strikes had a campaign, was like reach for a Lucky instead of a sweet. It was pitched at women, like Lucky Strikes, as if this is a way to lose weight. I mean, you think about how horrible that is right now. But I mean, this is how these campaigns were, like playing on people's emotions, right? And so branding has done that. And so you see Apple's like this idea of like brands existing with these strong statements, "I think, therefore IBM," or like, VW had think small. Again, it was playing on other things. So now you're seeing brands trolling. Well, I suppose trolling, right? Making a play on other brands. You're familiar with this idea, so now I'm going to expand upon that idea and say something else. So again, it's brands leaning on one of each other. So you see this development, this kind of war of brands happening. By the 1950s, you start seeing characters evolving. So Frosted Flakes and whatever, and people like identifying. And the brands telling their own mythology, like the Jolly Green Giant, trying to make these things which are basically trying to sell a story, and this proposition. And the famous one is like the Philip Morris Company. So they had these cigarettes that were pitched at women, and they were not doing too well. And so they thought, okay, why don't we pitch this at men? And they took a photograph of this cowboy, and they put it on their billboards, and this became the Marlboro Man. And cigarette sales, again, this is unethical, but this is the history of branding, went up by 300%, and you had all these city slickers who were just aspiring to be the rough and ragged cowboy. And so this idea of the image of something, the tribalism of branding, the tribe, so then by the 60s, you started seeing semiotics, playing with imagery, incorporating that. You see like American dairy companies, trying to pitch, because it's some things you have stereotypes in a community or in a country. So what they would do is they'll say, okay, if in America it was known like dairy products were the best from Danish ones were the best like dairy products. So if you design anything, you make it look Danish, people think, oh my god, this is a true dairy product, right? But even though it was just made in America, and I think Haagen-Dazs is the famous one. It's spelt to look that way, but it's not. It's just made in Brooklyn, but it's actually designed to look foreign, because this had the Americans' perception of like dairy is like, if you make it look slightly foreign, that means it's quality when there isn't. So you see that kind of thing being sold.